Well, joining us in the studio to expand the conversation this morning is our guest analyst, Mr. George Ndubisi. Mr. George, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, it will make for a better view if you take off your hat so our viewers can get a better look at your face.
Oh, okay. That's fine too.
Not a problem then. Let's begin with some of the stories greeting our lineup this morning as we look to discuss the impacts on this in terms of our national life. And over the weekend, the ex-Jigawa State Governor Sule Lamido made hefty accusations while speaking in an interview in which he said that the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, might be complicit in the annulment of the June 12 election and is not so much of a hero as was purported by his involvement during his NADECO days. The presidency has fired back this morning, calling him a revisionist who is looking to rewrite history with lies. Let's get your honest assessment of this accusation and refutal.
Well, thank you very much. Well, first I would want to start by saying it's a pleasure, a very great pleasure to be in your studio this morning. Well, Sule Lamido had actually made an allegation. For me, that is what it is. That is not to say that the role of the current president in the person of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you understand, in the days of NADECO, it's forgotten. Okay. I think Sule Lamido is actually speaking from an insider's perspective. Of course, he's not a child. Okay, he's been into Nigerian politics for a couple of years now. So I'm waiting. Nigerians are waiting because I know it's not going to end there. He's still going to come up with some evidence, you understand, to buttress what he has said earlier. It's good the presidency have come to refute that. Of course, what do you expect? But I also know that Babangida, even before the publication of his book, had actually said that there were some Yoruba elders, okay, some Yorubas, even though he didn't mention names, who actually supported the annulment of the June 12 presidential election. So I think the ball have actually been set rolling. Let's see where it gets from here.
Now, it may seem as though this is the year in which a lot of canker worms are being opened. First off, many would not have believed that the book by the retired General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida would actually own up to the fact that the elections was unduly annulled. Now, in the like of someone like the ex-governor, Sule Lamido, referencing part of the activities of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the Senate at that time, saying he only became more visible to the eye after the annulment, and it almost seems as though it was part of a masquerading in his own words. Do you think that if more canker words are opened to back his claim, it might change the perspective of Nigerians on how much of our democracy has been fought for and how it's been perceived over time?
The truth of the matter, in politics, one thing is constant, and that is interest. And sometimes some of the players in the political sphere, sometimes when they try to front this impression that they are fighting it just on the national cause, oftentimes underneath it is their personal interest. So sometimes you discover that, okay, it's good that the president had just been accused of something, that he actually participated in the annulment of the June 12 presidential election. And today he is the president. And I know that one of the reasons why he had actually come thus far, even though it's not all, is the fact that he's currently, even before now, being perceived as someone who fought, as one of the fighters of the democracy that we are enjoying today. Okay, so Lamido's allegation is actually coming in a bad taste to a kind of sour that record. But let's see how Lamido goes from here. If he's going to churn out more evidences, because I know it's going to be like a banter between him and the presidency. So, but let's see how far he goes from here.
Now, on NADECO as itself, he says that the coalition was formed not to fight for democracy, that was to fight against
the IBB's regime. I wouldn't want to see it from that light. NADECO, even after now, NADECO has been making comments, okay? And people will oftentimes see NADECO from a Yoruba coloration. NADECO is a body it's an organization, even though it has that cultural undertone, fine. But I think it encapsulates and absorbs people who actually champion the fundamental rights of Nigerians. So oftentimes when things are not done rightly, they have a way of, giving that sound like more of a pressure group, if you may call them, if you may refer to them as that.
I get your point. Now, let's wait for more evidence, much like you said, as this has also started quite the debate online. A lot of Nigerians are reacting to it. But in the midst of all the political storm, there is quite the danger of Nigeria sleeping on a growing insecurity. We're still mourning Benue State. In the wake of mourning Benue State, Plateau State has suffered yet another attack. 22 guests were mobbed and slaughtered. Now, arrests are also happening in the wake of this, but the president is also ordering more of a decisive manhunt on these individuals. Many would refer to his statements in Benue where he asked IGP if any arrests have been made. Why do you think that Nigeria is suffering quite the headache of nipping insurgency in the bud?
There was this interview I listened to where one of the House of Reps speakers actually made an allegation. I wouldn't want to certify that because I don't know from what source he was speaking from. That there was a time they assembled a team of security veterans who had the capacity to know exactly where terrorists can operate from or where they are operating from. They would not only know the number of the terrorists, they would also know the degree of ammunition that they have in their disposal. And just 3 amongst those veterans can kind of take these guys out. But because there were some individual interests, I thought, fine, if those people go ahead to stop this, to nip this insecurity in the bud, it's going to affect our inflow of cash.
In terms of security votes?
Yes. It's going to affect our inflow of interest. You understand? Because if you look at it, some persons, over the years, insecurity has more or less become an adult in Nigeria. And it's as if it's a cankerworm that have refused to be healed. If you look at the amount of security votes that people are getting, if you look at the amount of money that the government and some international agencies actually dishing out to make sure the Nigerian security situation, it's reduced. If not absolutely, at least to the barest minimum, it's as if the solutions are not working out. Now, the president went to Benue in the recent herdsmen attack that they said over 2,200 lives were lost. Now, the question you should ask yourself is, the arrests that have been made, have we seen these people? Oftentimes, the security officials would tell us, so and so number of terrorists have been bombarded, so and so place, and we don't see any photographics to back some of those claims up. So it's a kind of beginning to give our security apparatus some kind of trust deficits. You understand? Which is now leading to people trying to defend themselves. Because it's like there is this hide and seek game between the security officers and the insurgents, which may not be true, but the posturing of the security officials is not really helping matters. For instance, one would have expected that by now some drastic measures ought to have been taken. If the non-kinetic approach is not working, come on, go ahead and trash those guys out.
So if I hear you correctly, you also do not support the notion of adopting repentant Boko Haram members?
If you have tried that in the first place and it seems it's not working, because they've tried that, a lot of them, like I heard, were incorporated back into the system. But we've also had encounters where some of them are still returning back to their old ways. Some of them are now beginning to act as spies. We've had cases where some military, some military establishments have been attacked, bombed, okay, very deadly attacks, not one, not twice, not twice. And it's like, we cannot say that we don't have the intelligence to understand the role that some of those repentant Boko Haram, in quotes, you understand some of the havoc they've actually caused. Okay, so if that approach is not working, I think they are becoming deadly enough. The kinetic approach, I think it's a better approach this time around, because the attack is becoming deadlier as the days go by. So it's high time the government actually take some, I think, more brutal measures to make sure this issue of insecurity is addressed. Because whether you like it or not, 2027 is just by the way. And at the end of the day, it's also going to reflect on the scorecard of the president, whether he's going to return for the second time. And secondly, it would also affect the election, because a lot of people are actually displaced as we speak now. Some are in IDP camps. And if they are there, it's going to affect the level at which people would love to participate in the coming election.
Now, prominent figures in the likes of Mr. Peter Obi and the former VP Alhaji Atiku Abubakar have also urged the president to act quickly, besides reflecting on its scorecard. In their words, they say it is reflecting negatively on Nigeria's image globally. How much of an image tint is this?
To be frank with you, you see, first of all, if you look at since the commencement of this administration, there have been a very high deficit in foreign investments. Investors wouldn't come if there is insecurity. You know, in the business fair, I don't know if I'm the only one, I know that money is a coward when it comes to business. Money doesn't go to where its safety cannot be guaranteed. No investor would want to come to a country that security is not guaranteed, because first of all, I mean, your investments need to be secured. That's one. And secondly, we're also looking at the issue of our judiciary. Before an investor would think or consider coming to your country, your judiciary has to be top-notch. Your court rulings has to be top-notch. But over time, we've noticed series of irregularities, termed technicalities, okay, in our judicial rulings. These are things that affect our global image as a country, and it's not really telling out well. It's good enough, Atiku. We understand that they are playing the opposition, but then, it's the truth.
Now, exploring other options has been a much tinkered about conversation on what many consider as a pastoral angle to this crisis. It's often been called the farmer herders clash. Now, the Ruga settlements were discussed from the angle of how political it was. In this end, 11 states are talking about the need to end open grazing and begin ranching. Now, we're looking at state governors also offering lands for this to take place. But the challenge is on your analysis of where the Ministry of Livestock is and its, would I call it its relevance in this case?
You see, ranching is a global recognized practice, and it wouldn't be wrong if that becomes very common in Nigeria here. But the challenges we've had over time is that people who are engaged, who are mostly engaged in this pastoralism, people are beginning to be very uncomfortable with their lifestyle. You know, you welcome a people, they come to your place, you offer them shelter, you offer them land sometimes, or sometimes they come grazing. People wouldn't have any problem with that. People don't have problem with that. But when the same people begin to go into certain excesses, for instance, what happened in Taraba recently, where the only source of water, a woman went to that place to get water as their only source of drinking water, and all of a sudden you see maybe 2 or 3 persons with their hearts of cow coming and messing up that place. And the woman just called their attention, you people are messing up, only for them to descend on her and start stabbing her and almost lynching her to death. So when that becomes the case here, there, north, northwest, southeast, Enugu, Benue, Jos, Taraba, Bono, by same people, it begins to make others begin to perceive them as not having a real cohabitable intent. It begin to make people feel, okay, fine. If they decide to go into this ranching, the movement of these people, which people are going to do the ranching? One. What about the location? Are you going to limit the ranching to, okay, this ranching will be done per state, and whoever is going to do the ranching will be limited per his state? Because we've had issue. Look at what happened in Edo, where some persons were lynched. Yes, Uromi killings. Where some people were lynched because they said they came all the way from Kano to go hunting in Edo. I actually found it very difficult to believe, even though they said that was the case. You understand? I wasn't on ground, okay? So I couldn't really tell what the truth was actually. But when you look at the reason that they fronted, that they came to hunt in Uromi all the way from Kano, it leaves more, you understand, it leaves more to doubt, But let's see what the National Assembly will do about this and see from what angle they would want to address the issue of ranching.
You talked about pastoralism in relation to the grazing path. Over the years, there have been a grazing path through major cities in which these pastoralists move their cattle. Do you think that coming up with the ranching system and this Ministry of Livestock, you'll be able to change decades of a tradition of a people who are predisposed to raising their cattle this way?
That's another challenge. That's another challenge to the whole narrative. But it's not about the issue of the pastoral, what's it called now, tracks or ways that had actually been handed over to those people. Now, we've had experience where we've seen cattle moving right on the roads of Abuja. Is that still part of the grazing paths? We've seen people using their cattle to encroach on people's farmlands. Is that still part of the grazing areas? We've seen situations where people use their cattle to trespass on all manner of places, which is to tell you that it is not about even the path anymore, but about an intent, a deliberate act of incitement. Should I call it incitement, or a deliberate show of this supremacy, as if some persons are actually superior to the others and then they can do anything with it and get away with it. They can do anything and just get away with it. I think it's beginning to look like that.
Well, why I'm very particular about the Ministry of Livestock is because since ever it was constituted, it almost feels as though many Nigerians are yet to see the effects of its activities and programs.
We are living in a country where sometimes ministries are carved out, agencies are carved out, all manner of things are carved out just to compensate, you understand, political, should I say sycophants, if you may use that word. Because if you look at the Ministry of Livestock, we have the Ministry of Agriculture, which I think should be empowered enough to cater not just for the Ministry of Livestock. What about the Ministry of Fishery? There are people coming from the Niger Delta whose major source of livelihood is fishing. But look at how the environment has been so degraded by the oil exploration. So why don't we create a Ministry of Fishery that can also address some of those economic challenges, some of these environmental challenges, the environmental pollution that the Niger Delta people are experiencing? So the Ministry of Livestock, like you rightly pointed out, I am yet to see what they've done so far. Because if we've had that ministry working effectively, is this issue of herders farmers clash that they want to color it won't even be arising in the first place. So what are they doing?
Well, quite interesting times. Let's also look at another global challenge that is also taking its implications on Nigeria. It's the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran. The latest turn in it is the statement issued by US President Donald Trump on the intentionality to take out some nuclear sites in Iran. But away from the gun battle is the effects of this on the oil markets. Although many are saying that it would in some way serve Nigeria, especially with the coming on board of the largest single train refinery. What do you make of the situation as it stands?
Wow. Well, you see, the truth of the matter is the war between Iran and Israel, personally, I feel is an unnecessary war in the first place because human lives are lost. And some of these monies that are expended on buying some of those missiles that have been unleashed, you understand, on sometimes even civilian population, can be used to make the world a lot better place, a more peaceful place, provide food for everybody, put the right, I mean, you understand. But there are people who would rather prefer to spend money on acquiring ammunitions for the destruction of lives and properties. Bringing it back to what's going on now, you see, it's unfortunate. I know Africa used to be the centerpiece of Nigerian foreign policy, but our government, I think they decided to want to take a side with Iran and trying to call the government of Israel, and I think that's unnecessary. Even though there should be an alignment, when two global powers are, you understand, flexing muscles, you've got to be very careful. You understand on whose side you take, so you're not, you understand. Now, if you look at the price of oil has increased, fine, to our advantage. But the question is, a lot of things have actually happened to our advantage. Are we seeing the effect of that in our day-to-day, in the price of goods and services? How does it affect the average Nigerian man, the common Nigerian on the street? So is it something we should celebrate? It ought to be. But if you come to Nigeria, most times it isn't. Because it doesn't still, at the end of the day, it won't reflect down in the reduction of the prices and goods and services. For instance, the government came up recently and they removed fuel subsidy. And that was a very huge leakage. It had to go and all of that. Fuel subsidy had gone. Where are we today? Has it in any way reduced the cost of goods and services? No. In fact, things are even getting worse. Nigeria is still taking loans from IMF. Why do we need those loans when the fuel subsidy had been removed? The federal government is giving more money to the state governors. Fine, the state governors are 5 times richer than they used to be. Now, come on. Okay, that's the truth. You're richer, but how does that reflect on the life of the common man on the street? Do you know that the CNG buses have been hiring about CNG buses? It was just at the last African Economic Summit that I was just privileged to see about 5 of them packed, waiting to pick delegates. I was like, surprised, oh, fine, oh, the CNG bus. You understand? I was surprised. But ordinarily, that ought to be a bus that should be seen running in all the nooks and crannies of Abuja. You understand? At least giving like a first lift to the city and also relieving the Abuja residents, you understand, of the transportation stress.
Now, the big challenge has been about the dollarization of the economy, particularly with respect to 90% of Nigeria's revenue from crude. We talked about the Naira for crude deal to make the ease of refinery even easier for Dangote. You've cited concerns on why it has failed to take effect on the prices of gas, even at the petrol stations, and even in the prices of commodities in the market. Over time, many people have talked about the silent gold markets and mineral resource markets in Nigeria. Why do you think that despite this abundance of resources, we are still drawn into the dollarization of everything economically? Do you see a reason why the federal government, under its Nigeria First policy, grow what you eat policy can reverse this long history of a dollarized economy?
The problem is leadership. Over time, that was a problem we've had as a people, and it's a problem of even in Africa as a whole. You know, we've had the problem. Africa have not really been blessed with good leaders, visionary leaders. Every great society you see today, every great country you see today, you know, was turned around by a leader. Okay, you name them: Singapore, Malaysia, Dubai, you just name them. And look at what Ibrahim Traore currently is doing in Burkina Faso, despite their size. You could tell where he's going to. You could tell his intention about his people. But look at Nigeria. There is no state in Nigeria that does not have more than 5 mineral resources. More than 5 mineral resources. There is no state in Nigeria. In fact, some have more than 8. And each of those mineral resources can sustain a country like Nigeria if properly used. There are countries that don't even have mineral resources, yet they are existing. But what are we doing with ours? The problem of leadership, we also have the problem of nepotism. If you go to some ministries and you discuss with some, sorry, with all due respect, if you discuss with some assistant directors and directors, you just see a hollowness in ideas. You see a depth in, there is no depth. There are some ministries that haven't even employed for the past 10 years. For instance, FRC and Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria have not employed for the past 10 years. And some good heads there, veterans, are retiring. And they've not thought it twice to recruit new people. Now, there is a professional vacuum that is being created. So at the end of the day, by the time they recruit, who are the people that are going to hand over the baton of professionalism, of skill to those people? So it's a problem. You see, we just hope that we'll get our leadership right, because it is whoever becomes the president determines to a very large extent would influence who becomes the Senate president. You know, the kind of democracy we practice here. And at the end of the day, he would be the one that would appoint the IG of police. And at the end of the day, he would be the one that would appoint the ministers. And if someone who's incompetent is there, definitely it would also spiral down to the appointments. You see the all manner of tribal sentiments, you see the nepotism of the thing, you see people actually appointed or elected or a kind of giving responsibilities that they shouldn't have any business whatsoever to have.
Now talking about this, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had earlier promised Nigerians that he would not be afraid to shake up his cabinet. He has also done a little bit of shake up. There's been some suspensions, there have been some reappointments in that regard. But in regards to the service chiefs, they've been 2 years in office. Do you see the reason why there has been an underperformance that might warrant a shake-up in that regard?
I think that shake-up, it's really expected. We are looking forward to it because of, in fact, what has happened in Nigeria so far as the terrorism attacks are concerned, it's really embarrassing to every Nigerian. These things ought not to be happening. It's like the deaths and the massacres are occurring on a daily basis, as if there is no government in the first place. You understand? And look at, we are living in a global village. You understand? There are drones. We have, the US now just built a drone that can operate, that can fly for like 40 good hours non-stop, and has the capacity to bomb and carry out all manner of aerial bombardment and still return back to base with no trace. We expend money, but when you look at our priorities, you begin to ask yourself, what kind of government do we even have in the first place? We're not setting our priorities right. The issue of security is the fundamental right of every citizen. It's not a dividend of democracy. It's your right to protect the people. They deserve it. Good road is not a dividend of democracy. It's a fundamental right of every citizen. Health is a fundamental right of every citizen. It's not a dividend that we are giving the citizens hospitals, health facilities, good roads. Like, it's not a dividend of democracy, it's your duty. But here those things are termed as dividends of democracy. And they are advertised in such a way that it looks like the government have just come to do the people a favor.
Now, still talking about shake-ups and the impacts on the economy, the president has also rejigged the leadership of the NNPCL. Engineer Bayo Ojularina is in the hands of the saddle. There have been debates on the prices of just beyond PMS. Jet A1 fuel is another major conversation this morning. And when you look at the effects of this on the aviation sector, airline air ticket fares have also skyrocketed. Now, a couple of airlines speaking to news agencies have said that this is in direct relationship to the cost of Jet A1, which is now at over 1,300 per litre. Talking about some sort of subsidy in that regard, the challenge has been, I don't know your experience, but over time, the cost of flight tickets are way above 3 times the average minimum wage. And when you look at how a lot of businesses, especially interstates, in terms of the safety of our roads now depend largely on air travel, do you think that there needs to be some sort of immediate action in how high the cost of airfares are?
You see, in fact, you just said it. I think there ought to be an immediate action, but I think there should also be the political will to take some of those actions. Knowing a thing is not enough. It's having the courage, okay, to do some of those things and making sure they are done rightly. And apart from that, too, also setting up the right mechanisms to see that some of those policies of government are properly implemented. For instance, I'll give you a case study. When subsidy was removed, I know the prices of goods and services actually skyrocketed. But gradually, after the American government actually canceled what's it called, the American AIDS this thing, about
USAID.
Yeah, USAID. There was a certain reduction of the prices of rice, but you discover that that didn't really affect the way, the price with which consumers still buy this product. So you discover that it's not only the government that is responsible for some of this hardship that is inflicted on the citizens. You discover that even the citizens themselves also play a role in also tightening up like the security situation in the country on themselves. Okay, it's easier for them to increase prices, but difficult for them to slash those prices down, even when the cost, okay, of those goods actually reduces. It's difficult for them to bring it down, but very easy for them to skyrocket the price. So I think the government should do something about the price of aviation fuel, because of the insecurity in the country. A lot of people find it very difficult to use our roads these days, and some of the roads are actually very bad. So I think the cost of aviation fuel should, I think it should be reduced. I don't know how the government is thinking about doing that, but I think something should be done about it.
Quite interesting. Let's move on to another issue in the news this morning, and in keeping with our lineup on the program, the next issue is the case of malaria. I know quite recently Bill Gates visited the presidency and pledged to eradicate malaria in Nigeria. But one state that has been picking up the pace is Lagos. This morning, the Daily Courier published that Lagos has experienced quite a historic drop in the prevalence of malaria, and it's brought down cases as low as 1% in the state. Now, this is whilst Nigeria as a whole still contributes more than 1/4 to the global deaths from malaria. When you judge health interventions in that regard, how do you say that the country approaches the matter? First, I would ask because of our cultural receptiveness towards vaccinations. I know the R29 malaria vaccine had been rolled out last year. It's been deployed in one of the states in Nigeria. I can't put my finger on it particularly now, but let's pick up from there.
You say, well, congratulations to Lagos. I think Lagos have actually been on the forefront when it comes to addressing a lot of some of these health pandemics. Okay, I think Lagos State is doing relatively well, and I think Enugu is on that state that is also trying. And but one thing I would want to say is this: there are, I think, taking a more proactive step in terms of nipping some of those health challenges in the bud, it's a better approach for me than doning out. You understand, some of these either from Bill Gates Foundation, some of these grants and all of that to tackle some of these epidemics. Is actually, I think it's more expensive that way, and it doesn't really guarantee the desired results. Okay, it doesn't really guarantee a lasting solution, okay, in terms of addressing these health challenges. For instance, why wouldn't you prefer to give the people a portable source of drinking water? Why wouldn't you want to make sure that the mechanism of governance, especially when it has to do with the environment, why don't you want to make sure that the people, there are waterways, there are canals, to make sure that all the channels, okay, are interconnected, so there is no stagnancy where mosquitoes can breed. That's taking a more proactive measure, so that there won't even be malaria in the first place, than resorting to treating it. I think prevention is better than cure. Okay, I think that cliche is right, and it should always be adhered to.
Now, leaving the health angle, let's pick up on the education sector. It's been much focus on the tertiary examination with the conduct of UTME, particularly by the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAMB. Okay. Now, following the latest glitch, JAMB is also set to conduct its second mop-up exam this Saturday for over 96,000 candidates. It is also taking a stricter measure on delisting 113 CBT centers where it said there were some forms of irregularity. I know people had cried for the JAMB registrar to be sacked, but he, in a more remorseful way, begged for forgiveness from Nigerians, accepting responsibility for what many say might have been beyond his control. Looking at the JAMB incident and this latest mop-up examinations, let's see how it goes. What would you prefer is the way forward? For JAMB? Yes, please. With regards to the next coming one? There's Saturday mop-up examinations. 113 centers have been delisted. Okay. Your analysis of where we are when it comes to JAMB?
Well, I think the last experience wasn't really a palatable one. It doesn't matter whatever excuse that anyone is trying to front to have been responsible for what happened, the glitch that happened, you know, for the fact that it affected a particular region, like about 5 states of a particular region and just Lagos. You understand? It calls for a certain kind of suspicion. You understand? Considering the tribal sentiment between, you understand, how these two, what's it called, where the JAMB discipline is coming from, and, you know, there have been this perceived, you understand, sentiment, you understand, between these two, even though I wouldn't want to subscribe to that, okay? But you can't rule out the societal stereotypes. If you ask, a lot of public opinions will tell you that there have been this undertone, you understand, a kind of lack of trust between these two tribes, okay? But I don't subscribe to that as a Nigerian. But having said that, I think JAMB should do something more to make sure that what happened during the last experience, you understand, doesn't happen again. That's one. And secondly, there were people that said that the second exam that was set for them after the first result didn't actually reflect their output during the last exam, that the second exam became more difficult. I don't know if you actually heard that it became more difficult, that what they saw in the hall wasn't actually what they envisaged, you understand, for their level. So I'm thinking JAMB should look at some of these anomalies that had been called out and just address them.
Now let's conclude with another major political story. It's a talking point that has emerged from the People's Democratic Party, PDP. Plans to have their 100 NEC meeting had suffered a pushback when INEC flagged the notice they received as saying it did not have the approved signature by the Supreme Court's recognized National Secretary, talking about Senator Samuel Anyanwu. What do you make of this pushback that PDP's plan to hold its 100 NEC meeting has suffered?
Well, it's expected. It's expected because that's why some persons have actually said that that it's not right for the president to be the same person that appoints the INEC chairman. You understand? It's like he that pays the piper dictates his tune. Okay. So you discover that at the end of the day, I was expecting that. If you listen to the convention that the APC had, the president said he was almost excited that the opposition parties are having some squabbles, are having some problems.
And they should expect him to fix
it for them. You understand? So he's playing the Nigerian politics. And you don't expect him to give them like a free ride to come take over power from him. So I'm thinking he's going to do everything possible within his reach to make sure that, if possible, that those parties are not even registered in the first place. Like they're trying to bring up ADA now. That's Alliance for Democratic, what's it called now? There is this ADA that the coalition party are trying to come up with. And I'm thinking, like you said now, that they didn't get the signature of Anyanwu. The PDP people, like the Article camp, they want, there's this guy from Enugu State. Why the Wike camp actually wants Anyanwu.
Talking about Udo Okoye.
Udo Okoye, thank you. They want Udo Okoye because they feel Anyanwu is working for the interest of Wike, who has been, over time now, a thorn in the flesh of the PDP. And they feel that if the party wants to stand a chance in 2027, all the people, all the stooges who are working in alignment with Wike has to be, you understand, removed from every influential position that they hold, so that they can then put in their people to build a very strong cohesion, to build a very strong party before 2027. But it's like INEC is also playing, you understand, on the part of the FCT minister. You can't rule that out, which by extension, UK is the part of the president. So what do you expect? I think the best way the PDP should do, they should look for a way just to put their house in order and make sure that, I don't know how they are going to, because it's like a bone in the neck. You understand? When you have a bone in your throat, you understand, vomiting it out is difficult, swallowing it in is also difficult. Okay, I think they should just look for a way, because INEC, as far as INEC is concerned, INEC is saying it is Anyanwu that we recognize as the authentic PDP National Secretary. The PDP caucus on the part of Article are saying Udo Okoye is the person we want. And as far as electioneering is concerned in Nigeria, INEC has the constitutional mandate to determine who, at the end of the day, is going to be recognized.
Now, the PDP in itself, ahead of its 100 NEC meeting, also had put on the shoulders of the former Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, the responsibility of more or less reconciling aggrieved parties. It's lingered on for quite a while. Whilst he's been saddled with that responsibility, we've also seen the FCT Minister, President Wike, put together those called the concerned party supporters of the PDP. Almost seems as though there are three factions. Governor Seyi Makinde has also received quite the blame for what's going on in the party. How much of a hurdle does the PDP have in getting its house together ahead of 2027? To
be frank with you, it's quite a Herculean challenge, quite a Herculean word. I don't know how they intend to overcome these challenges, because whether you like it or not, these are very strong challenges. One, Makinde is also coming with his own aspirations. Some persons have actually rumored that he also has a presidential ambition. But let's just wait and see how that unfolds. Now, Saraki himself was the mediator who was called to come and mediate, okay, and over the case that that has to do with the appointment of who is going to be the authentic PDP National Secretary. Now, the Southeast region, the Southeast caucus of the PDP, they are fronting for Dokoye, which, of course, that's their slot. Okay, that's their slot. But the Wike team, the Wike's camp, which is a very formidable camp, because Wike himself actually proven to be a very strong and a staunch PDP member. If not, by now, one would have expected that he would have been suspended. But you still see him like as if he's still calling the shots in the party.
Despite this party.
He's currently an APC minister, yet in PDP. Yet the PDP seem not to have the balls to suspend this man or to check some of his excesses. So that's the problem. So I wonder how they intend to do that. And he has also come up openly, he's not hiding it, that he's still going to work for the interest of the current president. So how does the PDP intend to address some of those issues? I think it's left for them. I'm not a PDP member, okay? So I think it's left for them to know how to. But we are watching, we are observers.
Well, I must thank you once again, Mr. George Ndubisi, for taking out time to analyze the stories in the news with us this morning.
My
we
pleasure.
Appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Well, we'll take a break now, and when we return, we'll look at all the issues line up in terms of our national focus on issues in the news, particularly with the regards to the sad situation in Plateau State, a massacre in which more than a dozen persons have been left dead, with a call from President Bola Tinubu to the security agencies to launch a manhunt for those responsible. We'll also be looking to discuss with the NDLEA this morning in a quest to keep up with their work in curbing Nigeria of drug-related crimes and drug syndicates. It does promise to be an engaging conversation that will continue after the break. Stay with us.